The Taliban have begun enforcing a ban on poppy cultivation in Afghanistan. This is a significant turnaround from April, when the Taliban told us that despite their official ban, they weren't enforcing it. Listen to what a senior minister said at the time.
As you can see from our announcement, we said that for the moment we will not be taking action against farmers who planted opium this year. If we do, many farmers will suffer great problems.
And you'll hear what he says now further in our report. But what he said about farmers suffering is correct. Afghanistan is facing a drought and a worsening economic situation. And poppy cultivation pays upwards of $300 a month for those harvesting opium from poppies. Opium also generates significant income for the Taliban and Afghanistan, nearly $3 billion in 2021, which is between 6% to 11% of the country's GDP. But all this also contributes to the world's drugs trade, and pressure is high to curb it.
Armed Taliban fighters stand guard as a tractor tears up a field of poppies in Washir district in southern Helmand province. Afghanistan's rulers issued an edict in early April banning the cultivation of the poppy, the raw material required for opium, morphine and heroin production. Now the campaign is beginning. Afghan opium supplies over 80% of all users globally. The international community has been demanding more control of drug production since the Taliban retook the country last year. Our supreme leader has strictly ordered the ban on cultivating poppies, so those who are acting against it and continue to seed and cultivate it will be arrested and tried according to Sharia laws in relevant courts. For the farmers whose fields are being destroyed, it's a different story. They fear their livelihoods will be ruined at a time of growing poverty. We are facing drought and don't have big farming fields, so seeding and cultivating crops other than the opium poppy doesn't earn us anything. If we're not allowed to grow this crop, we won't earn anything. The new eradication campaign is mainly targeting those who planted their crops after the ban was announced. Others who planted earlier succeeded in harvesting, going from plant to plant, slicing the poppy's bulb, then scooping up the sap that oozes out, the raw material for opium. We were not aware of any order to ban the cultivation of poppies, and these poppy fields were seeded before any order was issued. We're upset because our crop was ready for harvest before we became aware of the ban. The ban comes as Afghanistan's economy has collapsed, cut off from international funding since the Taliban takeover. Most of the population struggles to afford food, and the country has been suffering its worst drought in years. Around 80% of livelihoods in Afghanistan depend on agriculture. Farmers are forced to ask themselves what can replace the opium poppy as a source of income. There is no easy answer.
And let's get more on this from journalist Ali Latifi, who joins me now from Kabul with more. Ali, we had been speaking about this back in April when the Taliban said they wouldn't be enforcing their poppy ban, but now it seems they are. What has changed?
Well, the way they had framed it is that for people who had already planted, they weren't going to get in their way. But what they were trying to do is keep from new crops and new harvests being planted. So this may be part of that, saying that, last year's crops will let them go and, whatever happens with them, but we don't want any new crops. That seems to be the only thing that makes sense at this point as to why they're starting now. And in that case, it seems to follow through with what they've been saying about it.
So what exactly are they hoping to achieve by cracking down on poppy cultivation? Is it really a motivation to try and cut down the amount of opium that is produced in Afghanistan, or there are other motivations here?
I mean, I think there are several motivations. One thing, it's great PR, right? Again, it's the one thing that they could do. If they could actually accomplish it, it's something that they could do that the Republic was unable to do. The Republic, with all of its funding, with all of its foreign backing, for 20 years was not able to eradicate the poppy cultivation. And if you're the Taliban, what you will say is one of the reasons, although the Taliban definitely had a hand in the drug trade in Afghanistan, but if you're the Taliban, what you'll say is, well, the former government was heavily involved in the drug trade. You had had MPs, you had ministers, you had governors, you had police, all kinds of different officials and people connected to the government who were accused of having an alleged hand in the drug trade. So what they can say now is, hey, because we've gotten rid of the corruption, now we can enforce this and get rid of this. Of course, again, ignoring the fact that they themselves also had a hand in it over the last 20 years. So it comes down to good PR again. And it also could be something about their relationships with the neighbors, because Iran and Pakistan, both of which they're very good with, even Turkey, also a nation that they're very good with, has complained a lot about drugs coming out of Afghanistan. Now, they don't talk about how their own drug mafias are involved and are, making it possible, but it's another way of trying to bring assurance to regional neighbors that we're taking an issue seriously and that we're able to crack down on this. So it's a lot of good talking points for them, but following up with it is very, very difficult.
But the root of the problem remains unaddressed, doesn't it? I mean, that there really isn't a viable, profitable alternative to poppy cultivation in Afghanistan for thousands of poor farmers.
Right, and this is so there's a few things. One, it's that there is no viable alternative. I remember years ago at a U.S. Embassy event where the U.S. Embassy basically threw up its hands and said our drug war in Afghanistan didn't succeed. They said that no legal crop can ever compete with an illegal product, and it's true. On the one hand, when something is illegal, the market dictates the price in ridiculous sorts of ways and in very exorbitant ways. And then in terms of alternatives, you need to lay the groundwork for those alternatives, and you need to have the markets and the support for it. So the former government, they tried pomegranates, they tried saffron, they tried aloe vera, all sorts of things. But what was the problem was that they didn't have proper markets within the country to sell those products, and they also didn't have proper agreements with other countries to make sure that our products made it out and were sold into the world market. So you would have farmers who were harvesting and who were planting these different crops and plants and things like that and vegetables, and yet they really didn't have anywhere to sell it. And there was so much regional competition in these markets. So it really takes, if you have to support that movement, you have to support that market. So if you want it to be pomegranates, then you have to make sure that Afghanistan's pomegranates are exported to the UAE, that they're exported to Turkey, that they're exported to other countries as well, and that they are properly sold within the country. That takes a lot of work that, again, the former republic couldn't do or didn't want to do. I don't know, either couldn't or didn't. And now, the Taliban will have to try and do the same thing. Because if you can't sell your alternative product, then you're going to go to the easiest thing, the thing that you will absolutely be able to sell no matter what.
Right. We'll have to leave it there for the time being, but thank you so much for joining us today on this. Ali Latifi in Kabul. Thank you so much.